book, and he just talks about them. There they are, and I'm going, oh, I was right. He already written it. And he relates it to the Kundalini because you have, in Kundalini, which lies in a dormant state in the base chakra, but the seat of Kundalini is actually in the crown chakra. And so when Kundalini rises, there's three main nadis that run up from the base chakra up here. You have the central one, which is called Sushumna, which comes straight up and comes up here to the crown chakra. And up Sushumna, you've got the Kundalini Shakti, they call it, or well, they call forces Shakti in India. And so this is a force. And then what's interesting is that they have Ida and Pingala, which kind of snake there. Well, they're the two twin snakes, and they come up to the brow chakra here and out of the nose, like this. And so these are your two snakes, or dragons, and when they come up, they have a mental force, which is Ida, the yin, and a vital force, which is prana, and that's yang, and that's in Pingala. And what's interesting is, when I was reading this stuff, and I go, of course, because you've seen like the pictures of the fire-breathing dragons. Well, what's a fire-breathing dragon? It's just someone who's got their Kundalini raised, and their Ida and Pingala are raising up out the nose. That's breathing fire. But in the, you can symbolise it with a fire-breathing dragon. And so they're the three forces, the three extra forces. So that makes 7. Sounds perfect for a hologram to me. Well, 7 seems to show up everywhere, doesn't it? Okay. I would have been sad if a mobile didn't ring during my talk. I would have felt left out. Anyway. Okay. So then you come down to the Buddhic Plane. And the Buddhic Plane is, well, in Theosophy they refer it to the intuitional plane. Steve calls it the dimension of collective archetypes. And certainly in our world, or in science and psychology, it's symbol. Okay? And what's interesting about this is, people here have heard of radionics, haven't they? And you got the ray cards, and you put them in a box, you twiddle some knobs, and you get a radionic remedy. Well, they have magnets in there, and they've got a force going through a symbol, produce the remedy. And so this is what you're doing. Force through a symbol produces the remedy. And so archetypes are interesting. I mean, usually those of you, I know there's some people see me talk before, I usually talk about my ex, and our archetypical relationship, because often you can look at how you relate with people in terms of archetypes. And we had a great deal. She was the Queen of Swords, so, I was and I was the wounded healer. And so any time I wanted to be wounded, I'd only have to ring her up, and she'd only be too happy to supply a few knives, Well, it worked. We were both happy. We had our needs fulfilled. And then I could feel sorry for myself. Once I figured it out, it was like, whoa. And once we really started getting rid of it, the relationship ended. It's built on that, A wounded inner child archetype. So anyway, so this is the archetypical thing. And what you come down here is I've done it in the way Steve does it, with the personal unconsciousness and the personal consciousness. And it's probably better to use here awareness. So this is when you're, the unconscious part of yourself. And this is certainly the limbic system and reptilian brain. And Charles was talking about that before. And then you've got your consciousness, or what you're consciously aware of. When I became consciously aware of, I'm doing the wounded healer archetype, well, that was quite enlightening for me, because then I could start observing my behaviour patterns. And so and this is certainly in the neocortex. And so here you've got there your triune brain, you know, the nervous system, and you can see how up above it you've got the archetypes. And like in India, when I talk about India because I spent so much time there, they have these things called Yantras. And they're like symbols or mandalas. They're mandalas. And mandalas have been shown through different, you've seen them in different, different traditions have had mandalas. You can see them in England, you can see them in Europe, in the American Indians as well. And what they say in India is yantras are imprints of consciousness, or imprints on our consciousness. And you can see here with a force and a symbol how it can imprint your unconscious and consciousness, which is your astral mental planes, okay? And astral mental should be in both, actually. And that, of course, is your emotions and thought processes. So you get all these thought processes created by archetypes. And they like imprint you, and they're very hard. And Steve says to actually do something about it, you've got to step out of the archetype. While you're in it, you can't do nothing. And what's interesting is that for me, and I learnt that while I was in it, because when you're in it's like you're in a game. It's like you're on a Monopoly board. You play, or you're on a theatre playing a role. And I did a great wounded healer. You should have seen me travelling all over the world, teaching people kinesiology, and with all these gaping wounds in my heart. That was wonderful. Right. Now I'm out of that, thank God. I have never been happier in my life. It's good. Anyway, so this is like a model that I've put together showing you the different levels of awareness. And what's interesting is, the more I read about, with Satchidananda's work on Kundalini, and he describes that, when the Kundalini rises, it's also like a level of awareness. And so, really, consciousness is here. The rest is, as you come up here, it's your level of awareness. You're aware. I became aware of the archetype. Well, I got rid of that one. I wonder what the next one is I'm doing. I don't even know it yet. But there'll be one. Okay. And what he describes is interesting because when the Kundalini rises, and it's, I've always had a sense of when it's rising, each chakra has certain psychological components to it. And as Kundalini rises, you get to work with and overcome those type of issues. And what he says is that the Kundalini, which is like a snake, lies dormant in the base chakra. Its seat is in the crown chakra, and in the crown chakra you have Shiva. And where Shiva means consciousness. But when the Kundalini rises, rise, you get the Kundalini Shakti rises to the crown chakra. Then you have then Shiva and Shakti unite, and you go into what India they would call Samadhi. And in other cultures it has different names. Okay, and then it descends back down to the base chakra, but it takes Shiva with it, and so then you become someone who lives in the world but understands the truth, but you can play act and be involved in the world, but you know really the truth. Here we've got a picture of Kundalini, Ida in Pingala. Also, it's Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve is like an archetype. It's the archetype of yin and yang. And Garden of Eden is like is the void experience, is that in this pure state of consciousness. Like Dale said yesterday about Monotheism, nothing but God. It's the same thing. In India they call it Advaita, not two. Not two, there's one. They say not two, which implies there's only one. And here in Tree of Life, and the Kabbalah, you've got Bina and Chokhmah, which are again the principles of yin and yang. Okay, so it's nothing new. And what's interesting, because Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden in Eden, and then there's a journey back, and that is the raising of Kundalini. And on a physical plane, we have the sperm and the ova. And this gets interesting when we actually start looking at it from the creation of a human being, because that parallels the creation of the universe. First you have a sperm and an egg, comes together and you have one cell. Just imagine, all of us one day, when we were conceived, we were one cell. And out of that one cell we get a fetus and a placenta and all the other stuff that goes to support it. Have the next one. Okay, and so what interesting, Kundalini has three nadis, which is three forces, and in the Kabbalah you've got three pillars, and interestingly in Christianity you have the three wise kings, and they go on that journey to see Christ, and following the Star of Bethlehem. Interesting, eh? Next one. Okay, now this is a lingam. And in India you often see these lingams, and it does represent male. They have like a yoni to represent female, and in the symbology of the base chakra you'll find a yoni and a lingam inside it. But it also has two focal points, and so this represents also yin and yang, having two focal points. Okay, so here we've got a picture of a sperm and an ova. And so what you've got here, this is the point of conception when the sperm gets to the ova, releases his little enzymes and burrows his way in, and then you have the mixing of the genetic material. And here you've got like the first instant, then the DNA mixes, then you get the first presenting of the first cell, with the first cell division, sorry. And what's interesting, I've got a book on the 8 extra meridians, and in it the person says, I can't remember the title